Hi, everybody. If you are joining me live today, I'm excited. I've got a lovely guest who I hope will become a friend of mine. Actually, I have a feeling he might do. I sometimes do this section in my YouTube channel, which is called Conversations with Susan, and I know that you have watched some of my conversations, and quite often they are people that have had near-death experiences, or there's been something that's really drawn my heart to speak to them. And Marc, who I've got today, is that such person that my heart was drawn to speak to him. I did reach out to him a couple of times. He came back to me with personal messages I thought was so beautiful, very supportive man. And I really wanted to share his message with you. So just to start with, thank you so much for joining me. If this is the first time you've found my channel, please make sure that if you enjoy it, to like it and subscribe. We are growing. It's amazing. The reason why I started this channel was to reach people that perhaps did not have the ability to pay for sessions with practitioners. And I really wanted to offer my service to you as humanity is changing and expanding. And we are all stepping onto that journey of ascension. So, what I do is I am a galactic channel. I'm known as a spiritual scientist. My background is science. And so I blend the science with the spiritual. That's in a nutshell. But if you want to read more about me, I have a book called Awaken the Light Within Your Heart, which you can find on Amazon. So I'm going to take my time now with my lovely guest, Marc. Marc is known as Marc the Shaman. And I really love that. He's known as the dental shaman. And I really love that because what does that conjure up in your mind? It's like, oh, we can have dentists that are actually holistic. Well, we actually can. I actually have a holistic dentist, although I don't think she's quite as holistic as Marc. So, Marc, thank you so much for coming and agreeing to come on my channel. It's a pleasure to have you, and we've spoken just for a couple of minutes. I don't really know much about you. I wanted to have it organic. We've set an intention with the guides, and just tell us a little bit about you and how you have this beautiful energy in the world and what you do and what is a dental shaman.
Wow, thank you. Let's tune in and see where we start because you're asking to talk about my life, and sometimes it's easy to start at the beginning, but equally, currently is kind of where I feel it should be. Yeah, I'm going to go with my flow here. So currently, you introduced me as a dentist. I'm kind of veering away from clinical practice after 40 years in clinical practice, and my calling now, as I'm calling my second Dharma, my first Dharma was definitely being a healing dentist, but clinically in a dental practice, in other people's practices initially, then launched my own 25 years ago, and then released that to a corporate group 5 years ago. And since we all know what happened 5 years ago, that was my calling to step away from the physical aspect and actually impact more people, I feel, with making transformations, not as dentistry, so to speak, but actually how to empower people to awaken their own inner dental shaman. So that's my book title. Interesting. It's a very similar title to yours about awakening.
Isn't it? Wow.
I worked a lot with Anthony Robbins 30 plus years ago. I was one of the team that brought him over to the UK.
Ah,
One of his books was Awaken the Giant Within. And
it
so
was.
30 years later, I'm kind of wanting to write a title, Awaken Your Inner Shaman or Your Dental Shaman Within. I don't know exactly how the title's going to go, but it's almost written. And it's been sort of downloading for the last 18 months when I was training to be a facilitator for the Sweat Lodge. I was up in Scotland,
Mm.
beautiful retreat space. And sweat lodging is my non-dental calling, but I kind of explained to many people why why sweat lodging can really impact and benefit our dental and oral health, and we might touch on that today. But I'm literally dropping a video on YouTube any minute now. It's already gone to final process, and the potency of a sweat. Have you been on a sweat lodge?
It's something that I am actually really interested in. I actually haven't done that. I've done, shamanic journeys and ayahuasca and San Pedro and so on, which I don't doesn't call me anymore, but sweat lodges do.
Brilliant.
Mm.
Yeah, having touched plant medicines myself more recently, but sweat lodging over 30 years ago, I always felt like one day I will facilitate sweat lodges. So I went on this training, and then after the training, um, this land appeared on the Isle of Wight, and it's literally going through the final paperwork as we speak
Oh, how exciting.
to create a healing center, a retreat space,
Mm.
um, sweat, and primarily for me as a part of a collaborative team in the end, where eventually with this whole team already manifesting, I feel I'll be involved with the shamanic side and the sweat lodge side, and then all these magical people are going to join, maybe yourself, and
Maybe. I've got a little bit of a feeling about that actually.
it's
Yeah.
sharing
Mm.
workshops, sharing retreats. I feel like a lot of
Mm.
the leaders are going to be doing that either through the digital age, like we're doing, or face to face in retreat spaces. Yeah, I think it all started with yoga, didn't it? Yoga. It was quite normal for people to go, "Oh yeah, I'm going away for a weekend or a week."
Yoga retreat. Mm.
Now it's
Mm.
like this all-encompassing retreat now, where the whole faculty of collaborators are getting together to share their knowledge and wisdom, and it's nice to do it in Bali
Yeah,
and
I saw that you were in Bali on your TikTok or your Instagram. I can't remember which one. Yeah, I saw you in Bali. That was lovely.
yeah, I've been
Mm.
getting around a lot over the last couple of years because my son's traveling and he's in Costa Rica. So I did a spontaneous visit with my daughter and we went and visited him. So yeah, lots of travel has been part of my life. Even as a clinician, I've always been attracted to travel. I had a very nomadic life as a child. And then after 2 years in clinical practice, just had this wanderlust. And I really did feel like it was a higher calling to get experiences what were called back in those days cultural exchanges, right?
Mm.
And a lot of people, thanks to Home and Away and Neighbours, were jetting off to Australia. So that's where I went in 1989. So what's that? 11 plus 24, 25, 36 years ago. And already done 2 years in clinical practice. So I was already kind of clocking up my mileage, so to speak,
Hmm.
pilot as a dentist. And I really wanted to work with the flying dental service,
Hmm.
working in with Aboriginal reservations and just get that real deep, more tribal indigenous experience. And it kind of happened more socially, but it didn't actually happen professionally. Just
So
to,
that's been a calling. Sorry to stop you. That's kind of actually been a calling. So you already had that shamanic blood within you and probably many past lives, and you were just being called to go that way. And do you know your astrology? Do you know your ascendant?
so very much a Gemini, very much air sign. Um,
You
so
don't have Sag. I mean, because Sagittarius is very much about, traveling, expansion. It's ruled by Jupiter. So I just wondered if you might have Sag rising somewhere.
I've got a very in-depth report from 30 odd years ago.
Mm.
I'll have to revisit it, I think.
Yeah, I love astrology. Anyway, carry on. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so
Mhm.
it was very much, I thought I was going to do all this dentistry to pay my way, and I didn't do any dentistry, and ended up doing a lot of rural jobs, very weird and wonderful jobs, working as a farmer, I was a docker, I was driving trucks on the docks of Darwin.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's really kind of an eclectic mix of meeting many cultures in Australia
Mm.
and befriended many of the Aboriginal side in Northern Territories. And then just didn't feel like it was time to go back after that sort of 1 year cultural exchange, and then just went on my own to the Far East. And seems quite normal nowadays. A lot of people are booking it online and doing all these round the world trips. But back then, it was just a spontaneous decision just to hop on a plane and go to Indonesia.
No mobile phones.
No, my family didn't know where I was pretty much the whole time. I kept sending photographs of my trip, like reels of traditional reel film. I didn't want to carry them around, didn't want to lose them. So I just
Yeah.
posted them back to the UK. So I never saw any of my photos for 18 months until I got back. It's how times have changed, right? Yeah. Um, so when I was in Indonesia in particular, I actually had the beautiful opportunity of living with a tribe in Siberut,
Mm.
and this is off Sumatra, a little island off Sumatra. Very early days of this tribe opening up to the west,
Yeah.
and just was in a small group of Westerners. I think there were six of us in total on a longboat into the
How
middle.
special is that?
It was phenomenal.
Mm.
And I often look back at my life now, the last 30 or plus years, think, okay, you can see this golden thread, and you don't necessarily see it when you're living it, but when you look back, you see this path, this beautiful, beautiful golden path. Even though it was challenging, you see the beauty in it. And it seemed like when I was there, I caught something, and it was diagnosed as typhoid when I got into Malaysia. But I started to get really sick, and we were living with a tribal group where the senior, one of the elders, was dying. And one night on the full moon, uh, all these shamanic beings sort of turned up. What would have, in my head, been those days would have been like witch doctors.
I was going to say, would it be? Yeah,
Yeah,
something like that.
well,
Mm.
they were doing some weird things with the moon, and they did
Mm.
sacrifice of chickens with knives and throat cutting to the moon, and all blessing this senior man, whether they were trying to save him or just pass him on. It's hard to know. But had those experiences, and I was living in tribal dress and face paint and all that kind of deal for over a week, living in very where there were stilted houses or huts, but it was basically swampy water. We were walking barefoot in there, and yeah, it was very strange things, hunting wild pigs and seeing big snakes in the water. It's really remote experience, not the kind
Mm.
of standard tourist trap type experience, and that shaped me so much. One, like you said, shamanically, but then two, I then kind of died. Well, apparently I did die. This near-death
Mm.
experience thing. I befriended some locals in Malaysia, in Taiping, Perak of Malaysia, a very remote part of Malaysia, and they got me to a hospital. Apparently, I was the first Westerner ever in this. It was a rural type hospital, very first Westerner there.
Mm.
And when I kind of came round from my delirium, I was told that they had to resuscitate me twice, and they thought they'd lost me. But obviously, second time round, they were more confident that they'd got me back, and I was sort of given lots of hydration and antibiotics and things, and then looked after for about a week in the hospital.
Mhm.
It's kind of weird because now I've like you, I've spoken to many people and read many books and watched videos on near-death experiences,
Yeah.
and it feels like now, oh yeah, that's what I just had a normal near-death experience, right? The
Mm.
tunnels and the lights and the
Did you? Did
yeah, and the
you? Can
voices.
you can remember?
Yeah, I had this really haunting voice say, "Come here, come this way." And it was kind of like dark. It was like scary.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, I'm not ready. And I had another voice, which was my voice, it felt like. It's
Mm.
like, no, I'm going this way. I'm coming back, basically. I'm not
Mm.
going where I was being called to. And came round when I finally came back, a totally different being. It's kind of like
Yeah.
almost like you mentioned all these psychedelic plant medicine type processes where you open your eyes after having gone through some kind of
Yeah.
journey, and it's like, wow, the whole world looks very different.
Hmm.
The energy, you see frequency, you see
Yeah. Much brighter.
yeah, and you slow down because I'm a very fast, typical Gemini in many ways, chatty and kind of
Mm.
nod and stop. And it really slowed me down and sort of gave me that grounding to
Yeah.
see. Because I think
Amazing.
I was just missing it. I was just whizzing around, onto the next.
Yeah.
And I think trained by dentistry, because I think any clinical work or I tend to call it appointment work. Like if you're a chef,
Mm.
if you are a nurse,
Yeah.
doctor, anyone who works by an appointment service, you kind of are run by time, whether it's every
Yeah.
minutes, every
Next one, next
minute.
one, next one, like a revolving door.
Yeah. And
Mm. But
yeah,
so that's a really good point, though, isn't it, about life? That a lot. I don't live like that now, and I'm so grateful that I can take time if I want to take time off. If I don't want to take time off, I don't, and it's just so nice to be able to have a life like that. But a lot of people are still living in the old earth, I call it, really the old values of, you know, 9 to 5 or 8 to 7 or whatever it might be, and then you don't get that break, and you just literally.
we've been having winter off. The last 2 years,
Yeah.
I've been hibernating and it's like feeling really guilty initially, like, what's going on? So I cut back my patient list and said, look, winter time is not when I
Mm.
do loads and loads of running around. I'm
Mm.
in my head, I'm creating and mulling, but I'm doing most of it in
Exactly.
bed. It's mainly in bed under
Mm,
the duvet.
mm.
Fantastic. I feel like a hedgehog, but a wait, not a sleeping hedgehog, sort of a creative hedgehog. So using my
Creative hedgehog, I like that. But
using-
Gemini is very, very creative. But it's also, you've got the two sides of Gemini, haven't you? You've got the air sign, but you've also got that part. It's like part of you is one and part of you is another. So you have to, I'm sure you probably find you have to have a balance of both, be
100%.
very driven, but also take that downtime to create.
It
Mm.
happens. Yeah, it really helps having a Leo wife. She's
Yes.
grounding
So,
for me. Yeah, and we've been together 23 years now. I was married
wow.
to an Aries, and that was just like, yeah, that didn't kind of was it created a beautiful sun and started our dental practice. A lot of fire, a lot of energy,
Wow.
but it was
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't the perfect.
What does she do? What does your wife do?
So she's been veering more and more into energy medicine as in Reiki,
Mm,
massage and things, but she really ran the dental practice for 20 years.
wow.
Her background was very much customer care
Yeah.
with businesses and working with airlines and things more.
But interesting how she's now coming into that energy work. So the two of you will be, yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's really fascinating how that happens.
yeah.
Like,
She's just gone through a
experience.
tough journey with breast cancer. Um,
Okay.
Thankfully, it was removed in the nick of time, but her lymph nodes were all contaminated through one arm. So she ended up having to have some of the kind of modern onslaught medications and chemos and radiotherapies, etc. But sort of nearly 3 years down the line, hair fully grown back and
Oh,
getting
bless her.
very positive results. I mean, it was gone
Mm.
anyway, but they wanted to make sure. So it wasn't like they were tackling a tumor that was still in the body. They were convinced it was gone, but they wanted to make sure.
But
So
that is the kind of medical experience, isn't it? That from the pace of just in case, whereas from a shamanic or a holistic perspective, we would see it as energy, wouldn't we? We would see it right. Okay, if that energy is clear, then that energy is clear, right?
yeah, and from my wife's perspective, it was very much I needed to do what I was told. I needed to see. She was very comfortable with the recommendations, the good news on one level, but also the security news, the making sure, the prophylactic news.
So how was that for you though, Mark? Because obviously coming from a man that sings into the ground, we'll go to that in a moment, but sings into the ground and, is at one with Gaia, Mother Earth, is a Palladian walk-in, how does that sit with you?
It was initially a battle,
Yeah,
but very quickly it was like my role is to support and help her through her journey,
her
and
choice.
and yeah, and I do that a lot with my dental patients.
Yeah.
A lot of dental patients, I don't force my more holistic ways. I tend to attract a holistic kind of patient, and,
Mm,
and they want to do some of what I suggest, and they'd rather do more mainstream other ideas as along
sure.
with it. So I've always been comfortable mixing. I'm certainly not an extreme. A lot of people think I'm an extremist, and maybe I have been. It's a bit like politics. I was
Mm,
trained in Guy's Hospital, very traditional medicine.
sure.
So maybe trained on one wing. Then I kind of got my experiences from travel, and then I met so many healers and wonderful health practitioners that I kind of was shown the other end of the spectrum. And
Yeah.
over 30 years, I've now grounded it into this kind of more integrated mix. And there's a time and a place to lose a tooth. There's a time and a place to
Yeah.
have some physical works done. And even in the shamanic tribes, they will pull teeth out. They will do their forms of treatment for symptoms, etc. So it's just
Some
just
some
changing the
something
way.
that's coming to me, just you know how it works with this.
Yeah.
So if someone has just an example, if someone has an abscess, let's say, a medically termed abscess in their tooth, because there's nowhere for that abscess to go, usually, then it would be a lot of pressure, wouldn't it, on the tooth, right?
That causes
So
pain. Yeah.
yeah, what would you say the causal reason for an abscess is from a shamanic perspective?
Okay. Um, So the physical symptoms are just hydrostatic pressure, right? So you've got this bubble
Mm,
and it's wanting to burst. When we've
hmm.
in our heels, haven't we? Like we got heel rubs from our tight shoes, and then you get this water blister, and then
Yeah.
as soon as it pops, it isn't actually that painful anymore. It's just that release of
Mm,
and release of pressure. But shamanically speaking, to me, shamanism is all about everything having consciousness, and that's
yeah.
an omniism. There's a lot of people use the term omniism, where every faith has its truth, and a lot of faiths do talk about the great spirit and the great creator and the great
Yeah.
consciousness. I'm not sure every faith really kind of trusts that everything has consciousness, but that's a shamanic kind of viewpoint.
Yeah.
Very comfortable with that because I've always been around crystals and I talk to crystals. I get messages from crystals. So that's a rock, a glorified, beautiful rock.
Yeah.
So if that's giving messages, I remember 40 years ago, I used to go to Stonehenge festivals in the early 80s, meet all the druids back in those days, go to all the rock concerts that were played there. And it was just a fantastic era. Used to stay all night through the sort of summer solstices and
So
things.
would you say, because I feel I'm science trained as well, like in, or you name it, I'm science trained in it, but I do believe that emotionally we have something that happens, so a dis-ease in the mind, which creates a dis-ease in the physical body. And I also believe that the soul is always talking to us. So the soul is kind of driving what experiences we have. So if our physical body is showing a message, then it's because we're out of alignment with our true soul's calling or our true soul's path to unconditional love. So when it comes to teeth, just going back to teeth, if it comes to teeth, I've got a couple of crowns, root canals actually, which kind of a regret. I never would suggest having a root canal ever, personally. But you helped me understand that and said, well, actually, if there isn't anything going on with them, if they aren't, if you aren't in any pain and you aren't in any discomfort, actually, sometimes worse to get rid of them than it is to let them just be, right? But if somebody has an abscess, let's say today, say you're listening to this and you've got a problem with your teeth, what would you say? Because I personally would say that there's something there connected to that tooth, connected to the part of the body, connected to a message that needs to heal.
100%.
What would you say about that?
I think you got two. Well, you got the Trinity, what I like to call the mind, body, spirit Trinity, or the mind, body, energy Trinity, and
Mm.
that is there's three factors going on. There's the physical
Hmm.
system, um, a lot of people call the energy the emotional side of things. So, what is the emotion? What is the learning? What are we being guided to? What are we learning from this situation?
Yeah, what are we
Um,
kind of being
they,
guided to
they
is really important.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's three levels. So first of all, when you're in pain, you've got to take something. So we can talk about,
Yeah.
you know, traditional pain management, which most people know about. Then there's holistic pain management, and maybe a hybrid where we integrate those two. Depends on
Hmm.
need. It depends how acute a situation is, and is it chronic? If it's a slow, lower grade one, it's easier, if I find, to do energy medicine and plant medicine for chronic, lowish pain kind of situations. Acute one,
Yeah.
people seem to want to grab, and me included, want to grab for an aspirin, a paracetamol, or an ibuprofen for those
Quick fix.
for those extreme pains, especially if you just got to get on with your day and you've got a headache or migraine
Yeah.
or whatever. So there's always going to be that battle between the slow fix and the quick fix.
Yeah.
And then there's, like you were saying, if you can get someone out of pain, it's a lot easier then to go down and do the deeper emotional work.
Access. Yeah.
So
Hmm.
some people it's just popping it. So it's a bit like the heel swelling from a shoe rub. Once if it's not ripe enough to pop, then you can't. But if it is, you
Mm.
can squeeze, pop, or ideally, I would always recommend you see a dentist to get it popped so it's done
Mm.
professionally, not with
Yeah.
dirty fingers and where you could
Yeah.
contaminate yourself more. If you're very wise and streetwise with oral health and then maybe you don't need to be a dentist. But I'd say 99% of people listening to this, I
Yeah.
would urge you to see your dentist, please.
Yeah, and we're definitely not saying, and it's really important you said that, is, I'm not a doctor and I don't claim to heal or cure. I know that you are a qualified dentist, but you are saying, we're not saying sit at home in pain and,
Oh, no, no.
we're not saying that at all. We're just kind of bringing, I don't know, bringing awareness that it's not necessarily always the answer to, go and like take a whole load of medication, to stop your pain. There are other things that you can do, and there's always a reason why your body's showing that.
Yeah, and if you're
Mm,
going to a quality dentist, you should get then the ideal diagnosis. A lot of toothache and symptoms are not always, and this is the kind of big, big debate I have online and on my website is
mm,
I often need to see people either on video form or
yeah,
photographs of what's occurring because it's just written words is only part of the experience of trying to diagnose something, like being a crime
yeah,
investigator. It's all great getting information, but sometimes you really need to be there. And
yeah,
um, I feel like, what's the one, my drift here? My drift is mainly that. If you're not careful, you can sit with a problem too long and it spreads and causes more dysfunction. So, working with a medical practitioner, not necessarily subjecting yourself to everything they recommend, but at least getting a diagnosis, maybe an x ray, maybe
mm.
clinical examination. And if they say, well, I can't see a reason for this pain. So
Ah,
then
that might be the,
because there are so many dental symptoms that just don't have any physical cause, and that's where the
yeah, it's so
psychospiritual
interesting.
causes are coming in. And then a lot
Yeah,
of doctors and dentists say, well, it's probably coming from your sinus, it's probably coming from your posture, your neck ache, and your jaw ache.
hmm, hmm,
So even medical people can then guide you to look at other parts of your body or listen to other parts of your body. And they can also be very direct and say, listen, you've got a cracked tooth here. You've got an infected
hmm,
tooth. You need to sort something out. They will probably recommend antibiotics and extracting the tooth or maybe a root canal. But at least
yeah.
you're listening then to
Both
guidance.
sides. Yeah, you're listening to both sides. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the same, I think, when we work with any kind of, dis-ease, basically, we're looking at it and going, okay, to help us understand how to heal it, sometimes it's really good to know what tissue it's in. So what brain relay it's held in, and things like that, because then you've actually got somewhere to go with it metaphysically as well,
Very
which
much.
I find is really helpful.
Yeah, and if you are there on that wavelength, like every one of our listeners today, then it's a lot easier if they explain, well, I have this understanding of life. Because it's very difficult for me and maybe for you to kind of say all this stuff to people who are not necessarily really ready to listen to it.
Yeah, sure.
They might nod
Yeah.
their head a little bit, and you might be wasting your time. So it's almost like it's really helpful if someone can be very open and express that openness to alternative ways. And how do they want
Mm,
to be treated? Do you want to be treated um, energetically and metaphysically? So
mm,
practitioners who have come up that sort of more scientific pathway and then move towards more naturopathic pathway and then can integrate both are probably the best equipped for really giving unbiased, really balanced guidance and then really helping the patient to listen to themselves. So you're empowering them to kind of really find their own path rather than you become this guru, a medical guru, dental guru, where they just say,
exactly.
to you that it's all about. And that's kind of my mission as the dental shaman. I was wanting to call myself, my ego said, call yourself the dental medicine man, because that's really safe. And you are a medicine man, a dental medicine man. But my spirit kept coming back to me and saying, Mark, you've got to, this is your strap line, this is your whatever you want to call it, your
Yeah.
new title. And I really struggled going out into the world with that because I knew there would be judgment. And
Stepping out of the spiritual closet. It's
exactly.
something that's one of my favorite things to help people to do. It's like, don't hide behind, I was a psychologist for years and a psychotherapist. And it's like hiding behind that, that traditional sense of who you are, and then actually stepping out of the spiritual closet. And that for me, just, I got thrown out of it. So it wasn't even something where I went, oh, okay, it's time. It was like, nope, you're thrown out. And that was, yeah. So I think that's really important, because I don't think you can be your authentic self if you are not, So you started being a shaman without realizing you were a shaman, right? And you were just guided to go to these countries and have these experiences, even though you weren't necessarily thinking that one day you'll be a dental shaman, right?
Yeah.
But it was part of your soul's calling and your guidance, which we spoke about before we came on, right? And I think we're always guided there, but I think also that if you are meant to step fully out and you don't, you cannot live your true, authentic self. You're always holding something back. And I think that's a really important message for everybody, is that, if you've got it there and you feel it, speak about it and do it that way. And I expect your clients, well, you'll call them patients, I'm sure, but clients that come to you, the beautiful souls that come to you, they must come to you because of a frequency match.
Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah,
I've had sound instruments. I've got this 32-inch gong that I've had for 35 years. It's always in my
amazing.
dental room, and the room's surrounded by frequency instruments and things. So I think many people kind of knew it, but they didn't want to give it that name, and I didn't want to give it that name. And you don't call yourself a shaman. You don't. It's just it's a rule. You just don't call it. So I don't. That's why I felt comfortable calling myself a dental shaman. It's not Mark the shaman or anything like that. While I know that I have shamanic energies,
Mm.
and I have spiritual shamanic ancestral lines, 100%. I haven't come from a tribe in the Amazon or even from Siberia, where yeah, there's been a lineage of shamanic healers
Mm.
that have been passed on through bloodlines. So there are many definitions, and I read a book. Well, it was called Awaken. Again, this Awaken
It's
title.
awaken. We've
Yeah,
both got
Awaken.
the awaken
Yeah,
coming.
it's called Awaken Your Inner Shaman, right? And here's basically
Wow.
saying everyone, we've got everything inside us, right?
I agree.
We all know this. When we really wake up, I feel like we know it's all internal. We are just, as in the microcosm, so in the macrocosm, so it's all there to tap into.
It's
Um,
just accessing it, isn't it?
yeah, we're multidimensional, and we have a shaman inside us. We have
Hmm.
a Jesus inside us, a Buddha, an Allah, a God inside us. We have everything inside us, a bit like power animals. You have all the animals inside you. Whatever you want to kind of focus on, you will manifest.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got it now, but I kind of went through a real purge, and I was doing quite a lot of Cambo back then. My mother was dying, and
I've
I
done Cambo.
yeah, so tough, isn't
Yes.
it? Very tough.
Just explain to people what it is. Go ahead.
Well, it comes from the secretion. If anyone doesn't know what Cambo is, they call it frog medicine and Amazonian frog medicine, where it's the secretion, it's a polypeptide secretion, but it's just like a waxy, slimy kind of material, mucus that gets secreted, so that it gets a bad taste when it gets swallowed. So the only real major predator for this little frog are snakes, and they will get swallowed, but they will then get spat out because they secrete this toxic mucus that snakes hate. So they get swallowed and then spat out again. So they don't really have any predators, which is kind of cool. But somehow this Amazonian shamanic tribal leader many moons ago said prayers because his whole village was sick, and he got this vision about this little green frog, and to not capture and kill them, but just to kind of get to know them and get to love them and actually keep them alive and take out some of their secretion to give to their tribal members. And from doing that, it's now gone on and on. It now moved into the West, as seen as this magical purging polypeptide that's apparently now curing and resetting a lot of people's immune systems. All these people with allergy syndromes are correcting thanks to this polypeptide. So it's getting really well researched.
Yeah.
But in terms of what it is, it's a nasty, toxic product that's polypeptide, protein basically, and it has to be administered under the skin. It can't be put under the tongue. It can't be swallowed, etc. So it's a bit of a nuisance in a way.
Did you? I had mine, but I've still got the scars. I've got
I
3 dots on my leg, three
know
little
you have to be
dots.
burnt, don't you? You have,
Yeah, and you actually get burnt with it, and
yeah.
then they put the poison in that. I mean, you actually, if you think about it, why would you do that, right? So yeah, and oh, apparently I was a textbook. This was years ago, by the way, everybody. I do things like this occasionally, and years and years and years ago, I did this and I was so sick. And they said to me, "You are a textbook." I didn't need any more. There's everyone else in the room doing it as well, and they needed more. And I'm like, literally, that was enough for me.
Get it out
I
quickly.
was a textbook. Mm.
It was all happening while my mother was dying, and
Oh,
I saw this one lady. She recommended it after the second time, but I saw her before she passed away. Then saw her. I was kind of talking about my mum going to hospice, and then the second time was just before passing away. And she said, "Do you realize you could come another time in this in the lunar cycle?" And whilst she mentioned that, and then we had the booking, my mum passed away. So, and then within the lunar cycle, I had this kind of trilogy of experiences of purging, and the last one was with my son as well. He came and joined me. So we did some father-son kind of healing, and it was all about spiritual purging and releasing of emotion from the pain of letting go of my mother and watching her,
wow.
pass in a hospice. So it was very traumatic, and that was pretty much 2 years ago to the day now.
Oh, I'm sorry
Um,
to hear that.
yeah, in many ways, it is a sorry
Mm.
story, and also very beautiful at the same time because we are all going to pass, right? And I'm very comfortable with the idea of
Oh,
passing,
yeah.
of
Mm.
negligible fear of death. I think, like a lot of parents say, they just feel like sad for losing, not seeing their
That's
grandchildren.
the only thing, isn't it? When you're a parent, I'm a parent of two teenagers who are 17 and nearly 16. And yeah, that's the only reason why, right? And also I have a lot to do in this earth
Or
and
you have fear of death.
definitely
If you have,
s-
I'm
so
assuming,
much to do.
yeah.
Yeah, so much to do.
Yeah.
Something I was going to say, because it was 2 years to the day that my dad died as well.
Huh?
Yeah, his was a slightly different experience, but yeah, it was around about the same time. So I wonder if we needed the parents, it was their time to not be on this earth at that time, you know.
She didn't want to hold. She always felt like
Yeah,
holding. She was very independent. Didn't want
yeah,
to be a burden. All those kind of things. Uh,
yeah. And I think he was the same. So
mm.
yeah, wouldn't have wanted to live like that. Yeah. Wow, how interesting. So so Mark, where are you located?
So sorry, very near the that interesting junction at the moment on the A3 meeting the M25.
Mm.
Last 2 years they've been doing all this roadworks. If you ever go through Surrey towards London or
So a lot of people that watch this are in the States. In fact, there are a few people on seeing them writing little notes on my
near
YouTube here
Wimbledon, they'll
saying
know.
hello and all of that, which is
Yeah, they'll
nice.
they'll know
Um,
Wimbledon, the tennis. So it's not. We're a stone's throw from Wimbledon, really.
yeah,
In
not
the
too
car.
far from that Wimbledon side. But of course you can see people in practice, but you can also see people as we are talking together here, right? So would you work with people internationally as well?
So 18 months ago, I started building an online second, more of a second opinion, more listening to what they've been told, and it doesn't resonate. They're sitting on the recommendations. And a lot of people just want to know if what they've been told they should actually do. And it's not
Mm,
about me saying yes or no. It's about sounding out because everything in medicine has a minimum two options nowadays, right?
yeah.
And there's a myriad of options, quite frankly, even one of them being, can we just get away with doing not a lot other than managing
Yeah.
ourselves and
Yes.
our mind, body, spirit, trinity? Just keep working on cleaning our physical.
Cleansing.
Yeah, and a lot will just go away, right? But if the actual physical demise has got to a point where physical treatment is required, then what are the ways of doing that? Because there
Yeah.
are again 500, 5 to 500 choices of what materials, what methods, and from mainstream all the way to very, very kind of out there naturopathic techniques. So
Mm,
it's a minefield, and I wouldn't say I can give 100% perfect advice, but I get people back on track
that's
to
amazing.
self
Yeah.
and be empowered to kind of research certain areas
Yeah.
depending on how they want to be educated and empowered, really. Some want a quick fix and just say, Mark, yes or no, shall I do this? And others want to kind of really chew on the fat, especially if they're not in extreme pain,
Mm,
being told they need all their teeth out. But it can be done now, it can be done in the next 5 years, things like that.
wow.
Future
Yeah.
planning. I call it 5 year planning, health planning.
Mm,
But
mm. But
and
that can also be subject to change, can't it? As you said, like if we do, for example, I mean, I truly believe that we can heal ourselves. And I think that if we've got that intention and that we know where to go with it, it's no point saying, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything at all. And your teeth are all rotten and falling out, and, you're not very well because of it, just because you don't want to do anything. That's a different way of thinking. But if you've got an intention and you also understand, perhaps you understand, that this is actually part of a trauma that you've been holding for a long time. And you actually, when you release that trauma, it might relieve that message that's held in that one tooth, because teeth have got different, am I right, teeth have got different parts, like the intestines, or responsible for digestion, or the heart or something. Does that
Yeah, so
make
you
sense to you?
you asked me this question that more or less at the very beginning, and so it's the perfect time to bring it in now.
Mm,
It's one every part of the body, as in the microcosm, so in the macrocosm, relates to different parts. So the
mm,
eye, for example, different parts of the eye, different parts of the ear, the hands. People read your hands, read your feet, read your eye.
feet, yeah,
Every body part seems to sort of reflect the energy system of the body. So every
yeah,
region of the mouth in the dental system relates to the what the Chinese call meridians, or we now call meridians, or energetic pathways. So that's
mm,
quite a common knowledge. A lot of traditional dentists still poo-poo it. There are sort of Western scientists who've kind of feel they've proven it with energetic technologies, etc. And still, there's this battle where, well, this is not evidence, this is not science. Da, 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 da. So there's still going to be this battle between proving energy medicine versus proving physical medicine. But there are enough believers in the meridian pathway process that, like, your wisdom tooth, or right at the back of the jaw, is very much related to your heart. So you getting, if you are getting wisdom tooth issues, what's that about your heart, for example? At least ask yourself the question. It may not be
mm.
necessarily a heart issue, but it could be, right? So if you don't know the
But
path,
it could be your heart.
and then it could be your
So
heart.
it's your heart, your
Two-way-
chakra, your heart energy.
a two-way street. And
Yeah,
And to go
yeah.
back to what you were saying, and I was wanting to know when I was going to mention this, during August, I've been kind of getting to understand this week, this 10-day, maybe 20-day kind of spiritual time at the end of July going into August, called the Lionsgate time. And over the last 5 years, I'm really getting really in tune with it, and working with Lionsgate teachers and trainers and spiritual metaphysical beings, people. And I was downloading all this energy and information when I was in Portugal, and then back in the UK during that time. And I gave them eight names. So there's on my YouTube channel, it's called the Lionsgate playlist. And number one of the Lionsgate was, are you getting weird and wonderful symptoms in your jaw, in your mouth, in your head, your neck, and your ears? And a lot of spiritual people say, yeah, I get ringing all the time, like tinnitus. But they didn't necessarily think a dental symptom was
Mm,
was an ascension symptom, or a signal, or a communication that wasn't just traditional. You need a filling, you need a tooth out, etc.
yeah.
And the big message I got when I did number one of my eight was, in fact, is this a trigger from a past life? And it was like, if you are getting symptoms around, just tune in and just meditate. And don't be surprised if a miasm, or a past life experience, kind of comes up. Because a lot of people have had trauma in their past lives, in their teeth. Anyone that's been in battle. So you've got
Hmm.
to believe in past lives and reincarnation. And how I kind of feel even more comfortable about believing in it is that we can pick up the energies of the world, and and our history, our ancestors. So
Yeah,
even if you don't believe in personal reincarnation, maybe you can tap into the Akashic records, and into the energetics of all
exactly.
past ancestral life. And then if you're experiencing some kind of symptom in your face, in your head, your neck, could this have been a death trauma, or a major incident in battle,
Mm.
or execution, from a hanging, a garroting, to sword fights, bullets, suicides, etc., etc. It's
But
quite
witches
dark.
as well,
Yeah, and the witch.
Mark, like, drowned and like burnt at the stake or whatever, that I'm sure.
Yeah,
Mm,
a lot of beheading for sure.
mm.
Talking more like the trauma, and that's where a lot of people have issues with going to the dentist. They have this fear of suffocation. So maybe they were in a drowning pond as a witch, or they were on the Titanic and drowned, or whatever. Just drowned. in the past. So I've I've had people abreact and go into past life experiences just by sitting in the dental chair, my dental chair, and I'll either touch them kind of close to the neck or throat, or put a bib round them, like things like that, and they would just go off into a weird, wonderful reverie, and all I would do was just help them through it. And I've been trained in past life therapy and hypnosis and neurolinguistics for 30, nearly 40 years, in fact. So I was kind of comfortable with that when it happened spontaneously.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's the point? I think I think I'm
So,
trying
so yeah, so the connection between,
to
you know, your
say
Lionsgate series that you've done, which is amazing. I watched some of it and you sent it to me, and you know the connection between those activations and now, because we're obviously not in, you know, coming up to the Lionsgate just yet, but it would be amazing for people to watch those and kind of feel into it and feel those activations, right?
yeah, because I'm presuming a lot of your audience really resonate with crystals, and we have a
Yeah.
beautiful crystal in our mouth called hydroxyapatite, the lattice that shines our teeth if they haven't been cut into veneers and
Oh, wow.
rounds. All that lovely enamel is a crystal, and in my downloads,
I never knew that. I
uh,
never knew that.
oh. And then
Wow.
the
They're
link.
crystal.
Yeah, it's all a crystal lattice. The outer shell, the inner surface is dentin, which is more like a hoof, like nail and hoof fibers. It's more of a
Yeah.
protein fiber. But the outer chewing shell, unless we wear it off, is just pure crystal, hydroxyapatite crystal. And many people collect apatite crystals. There's a beautiful, beautiful blue crystal called apatite. And the way I downloaded the information and also kind of resonate with myself is teeth are all intercommunicating with every fiber of our being, but in
Yeah.
particular through neural pathways to our brain, etc. And the ligaments, when we chew, all the vibrations kind of give us guidance on how we chew and then how we posture, our head posture, our neck posture. So our whole muscular skeletal system is kind of balanced and counterbalanced by our dental position and our dental movement. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like really, really a potent cog in the system, right?
It is, isn't it?
And it's an energetic cog, it's a physical cog.
Mm.
And we could empower that so much more if we really interconnect with all the cosmic rays that are out there. So I call it lunar bathing, solar bathing, and stellar bathing. So whenever you're under the stars, just smile to the stars and allow the cosmic rays to go into that crystal lattice. So you're kind of letting the cosmic moonbeams and the star beams and the sunbeams to go into our teeth and then to do its
Wow.
whether that's a download. So a lot of people call it download. And how are we receiving this light energy, this cosmic ray? Is it through our skin? Is it through our hair? Is it through
Never thought of the teeth.
and
So
even
I'm a sun, like bring me the sun, the light codes of the sun, bring me the moon, that's fine, and the stars. I never thought, did anyone on here? I know I can see you guys all chatting here. Anyone thought of bringing those energies into your
how
teeth?
do we charge crystals?
Put them in the moon, right? On the full moon. I'm like, yeah, we can't put our teeth on the full moon. So we'd have to stand out there and just like bring,
You can
wow,
just smile to the moon, lunar bathe. I call it lunar bathe.
smile to the moon. I
Yeah.
love that.
Stellar, lunar, and solar.
Wow.
Yeah, it's on those YouTube
Okay.
one. One
We'll
was
put the link for you guys. We'll put the link for you afterwards, later on today, where you can get those videos and you can actually go onto Mark's YouTube channel. Definitely. So you've got a YouTube channel, you've got TikTok, I know, you've got Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, just on the website, it links to all my kind of social media side of things. And they all overlap, right? But I've written a lot
Yeah.
of blogs. So a lot of what we're talking about today will be in my blogs in particular,
Yeah.
power of sweat lodging and a lot of shamanic living, even the power of humming and activating the vagus nerve,
Yeah.
all the detoxification ancient techniques. So I've just done about five, working with a lovely company in Bangladesh, and they just asked me, would I be interested in working with them? And they just creating animations around my shamanic dental knowledge, and it's all about ancestral lifestyles and how they
Mm.
impact not just our general health but also our dental health. And the obvious one is obviously the diet, the primal ancestral
Yes.
diet that wasn't processed, wasn't full of sugar. It might have had some fruit sugars at certain times when we harvested the fruits, even
Yeah.
bananas, etc. But So while some cultures did have tooth decay, even in ancient times,
Did
and
they?
yeah, especially cultures around where there was a lot of sand and mixed with dates. So a lot of that Saharan kind of African kind of region, if you were getting your teeth eroded by the sand and you had sticky dates on a regular basis sticking to your teeth, that's like eating toffees and sugar. You kind of lost your protective crystal, right? Because the sand is down the.
Wow.
So some skulls have shown tooth decay, but I would say the majority of ancestral skulls don't show tooth decay. A
Don't
bit of tooth
know.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. That's incredible, isn't it? Wow. I think I had all my we'll call them problems with my teeth when I was so much younger. And we had what's called a school dentist. And the school dentist at that time, showing my age, but school dentists would uh don't quote me on this, guys, but let's just say they would take out more teeth and do things to your teeth that perhaps you didn't need to have done at the time. And I think a lot of that happened then. And since then, in my latter years, I don't have any problems with my teeth. My teeth are probably the best they've ever been. But because of the earlier years of all of that intervention that I had, I think it did create an imbalance. Can two things I really want to ask you, and I'm aware of the time. Um, One is about sweat lodges, and the other is about the mercury that used to be used. I mean, my dentist doesn't use anything like that, and
Most places don't.
a lot of dentists don't now. But what would you say if you had? Yeah, that's probably the best thing to say. So if you have mercury fillings, what is my dentist has like a protocol, like a really careful protocol, right, that she uses if she's removing one. And it
Absolutely.
only happens when I've got to have a bit of work done, and like you might as well remove that at the same time, right? But I haven't gone to have any of mine out. I think I've got one or two now, but I haven't done that. But I know a lot of people do. What would you say about that?
Well, you either do it just because that's what you've chosen to do, and if you do choose to do it, then like you do, you have it done under incredible protocols. It's called the SMART
That's it. Smart
um,
protocol. Yeah.
SMART protocol. You just Google SMART. It's very big in the States, where
Mm.
it's a bit like treating mercury fillings like asbestos, where it's the room is super safe to remove this stuff so that you're not ingesting it and
She
inhaling.
wore a massive gas mask as well, like with things. Yeah.
And dentists and staff need to be protected too, right? So everyone needs protection. And some people say the reason why dentists are quite unusual is that they've worked with mercury for their careers, especially the senior ones like me. And so maybe we suffer from micromercurialism. And everyone knows about the famous hatters or the famous Mad Hatter, because what hatters used to do was dip their fingers in mercury to then felt the bowler hats. So all their
No, I never knew
yeah, they
that.
had their fingers dipped in quicksilver or liquid well, mercury, a really comes the liquid. So that's where the expression "mad as a hatter" came from. But maybe "mad as a dentist" could be another expression.
Probably will be later.
A lot of people call
Wow.
me mad, right? I'm certainly a mad dentist to a lot of people, and maybe they're right, and maybe it's good to be mad. I don't know, but anyway, so yeah, do your research on mercury. Don't have any old dentist just drill out a mercury filling. But I wouldn't necessarily say that's the first way to treat it. I would look at being scientific now, because you're a scientist, is maybe get the right testing done to see if you have high mercury levels. And mercury doesn't just come from teeth, it comes from the large
Mm.
fish, like the tunas. And if you eat shark and whale, then the very big fish will be full of mercury. The very small fish, like anchovies and even up to a point mackerel, but sardines, they don't have very little apparently, and it only kind of condenses and increases in intensity as the fish get bigger because they're eating the smaller fish, so it kind of
See,
expands
ah.
the fish system. So
It's
the
interesting. I became vegetarian. It's just over 2 years now, and I was a non-meaty person just because I just didn't like it, not because I was being anything at all. And then 2 years ago, I woke up one morning, full moon, I think it was in Libra, and I just went, I just can't eat fish anymore.
wow.
And calamari was one of my favorites,
Mhm.
and so we were just about to go to Gran Canaria, on a trip, and I ordered calamari, and just to try it, just to see, because I was abroad, I thought it was better than England, and I just could not eat it, and it was like that was it, that was it, and it was almost like my soul was saying to me, this is not for you anymore.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting, isn't it, how it's about frequency. For me, it's about frequency. And so I think I've been guided towards that because of a frequency mismatch.
Yeah, and you listen to it. So I find that with the Mercury movements or the Mercury removal movement, it all started when Princess Diana in the 80s had her
Ah,
things taken out, and then it got into the news. And yeah, the phones never stopped ringing because people knew that's what I did as a speciality back in those days. And I think a lot of people were just, they weren't listening to their soul, they were listening to their brain. And, what I would say to people now, what I do say to people now is, can you just tune in and see whether you really need this? Shall we get some medical tests done first? And shall we look at your diet and see how much fish you eat? What other sources of mercury are in your system? And before doing anything else, if they're high, is then we go on a massive purge and a
mm,
heavy metal detoxification program. Some people do it intravenously and very rapidly. Other people do it very slowly with different herbs and techniques. And that's where
zeolite is zeolite something
yeah,
you would
yeah.
use? Yeah,
So,
yeah. Mm,
zeolite, something I've taken for many years just because of my professional kind of risks.
mm,
And then there's parasites. So parasites feed off heavy
mm.
metals. So you have to do kind of a heavy metal detox as well as a parasite detox. And what helps with all that? Sweating, sweat lodging, and
Perfect segue, right?
and purging with
Mm,
plant medicines. Whether been I'd say my favorite for purging is Cambo, but a lot of people purge on ayahuasca and other kind of more plant medicines rather than sort of.
mm.
But there's different paths for different people, and people say it calls you, like a book might come to you, or a podcast might come to you. A certain plant medicine might come to you. Go,
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this for many years, and now I've suddenly heard about someone who's doing it next weekend at a retreat. So
That's what happened to me with ayahuasca. Yeah. Yeah. Each time, oh, that person's it's not far. So, oh wow, that's amazing.
it
Yeah.
seems like we don't have to do anything, right?
No, if you're
Maybe
meant to, it's a calling.
if you get more
Yeah.
masterful, it's like just chill,
So I
let
feel I'm
it
called to
come
the
to
sweat
you.
lodges. I feel I'm called to them, but the one that I was called to before, which was a few years ago, uh, I'm not very good with mud. I'm not very good with getting dirty.
Mhm.
So this place where that they were holding it, it was a muddy field. It was mud everywhere. And for me, that just does not fit with me. So tell me about your sweat lodges.
Then your first one should be a summer one, a season. Pick the season that suits your body,
Yes. Yeah.
because I would always urge people to do their first one should be a really authentic one. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of trained, and I have kind of Lakota spirit guides and Lakota shamanic beings around me, and their version and all your American. Are they more North American, or when you
All over.
yeah, all over. But the
Yeah.
North America, Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota, the Black Hills is the Lakota region of Dakota, and it's called a Nepi, and it's their style. So I've been trained, and I spiritually just kind of download their way
How
of vision
beautiful.
questing. It's for vision questing, for detoxification,
Mm.
warrior training, whatever it is that you want to go for. And a lot of people, it's just curiosity. A lot of people take plant medicine because they're curious, but I think it goes deeper than curiosity. But that's what it feels like. Oh, I'm just curious. I think I'm going to try this week. But yeah, for you, I would highly prescribe a summertime one, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Really bad weather,
Yeah.
you get a real hot rainstorm, then you just don't turn up. You just pick and choose
Yeah.
when it's beautiful, when it's dry, crisp.
So give us a picture then. So I'm aware I've got probably about another 5 minutes to wrap up because I'm actually teaching at 3:30. So I'm running a workshop. But I've got about 5 minutes. But if you just kind of give us a picture of how it looks. So is it a heart? Is it a hole in the ground? What does it look like?
There are some beautiful pictures on my website. There's this video is about to come down on YouTube any minute now, which there's about 100 different images of sweat lodges. But
Oh,
very quickly, It's not always pre-made. Sometimes we get the groups of people to gather you need 3 meter saplings that are
Mm,
flexible and bendy. So living saplings, you want to cut them, hunt them down. Usually willow and birch type kind of bendy, and you don't want them that
yeah.
maybe an inch kind of diameter at the most. And then you, as a team, you go and harvest 28 ideal pieces, and then you bend them into bows, tie them in a circle. It's about 4 meters, let's say a 4 meter diameter, and then that can take a couple of hours. So that's if you're having like a retreat where you're spending quite a bit of time together,
Yeah.
or you go to one that's pre-created but hasn't been covered. So
Yeah.
imagine let's see it like an igloo. I was
Yeah.
an igloo.
Okay.
The the purpose of that shape is that it is the womb. It's the female womb. It signifies the
Ah,
female womb. And
yeah.
the hot stones that get placed into it are kind of like grandfather's tears. And the fire is kind of also the sperm, for want of a better word, or the masculine energy. And
Yeah.
then it's kind of pathway between the fire and the lodge, and that's seen as the umbilical cord. So when you come out, a bit
Ah,
like you hear a lot of Christians in particular talking about their religious awakenings as being
mhm.
born again.
Born again. Yeah.
This rebirth, and the spiritual community tends to just call it rebirth. So when you come out of the sweat lodge after potentially 4 hours of being in pitch darkness, and the beauty of sweat lodging versus saunas, well, you could have saunas in pitch dark. I think generally they're not
Yeah.
quite illuminated. So you're in pitch darkness. Back in the day, it would have been buffalo hide. Nowadays, it's more like blankets and tarpaulins and maybe blackout black plastics that you can get from gardening centers. There's many different ways to kind of black out a
Yeah.
sweat lodge. And it can be as quick as a 1 hour one. The main purpose of them is that in darkness, talking to someone very trained in psycho-spiritual therapy and trained background and training in this, it's a massive psycho-spiritual process where in
Wow.
darkness you are purging sweating. There are shamanic rhythms. Often there's a drummer just drumming beats and creating that kind of hypnotic shamanic vibe.
Yeah.
There's a talking stick and the water poro as he places or she places the water on the stones and gets very hot. You're battling two different demons. You're battling that kind of
Mm,
demon because it is quite physically uncomfortable. You're not necessarily naked. I don't really support the naked thing. It's more like
mm.
go as you want to be. Most people are going like swimming costumes and just minimal clothing. Um, and with the talking stick, as the steam is coming through, then there's a round of a purpose round. So there's usually 4 purpose rounds. So one could be a healing round, one could be a gratitude round, one could be a vision round, and where everyone, when they have the stick, they are supported in whatever they say. So it is therapy, it's therapeutic.
Mm.
And you're then communicating your loves and your demons into the darkness and being supported by tribe
Wow.
of beings that are kind of there for you. So
That sounds beautiful. It sounds so sacred as well. And that's the kind of thing I actually do feel a strong drawing to it, actually. So are you running one soon? Because I know you're not too
as
far
we
away.
speak, it's taken nearly a year. It's a big, it's over £1 million project with barn conversions and woodland on the Isle of Wight, but just turning that into a retreat centre as we
Yeah.
speak. So
Amazing.
by the
Yeah.
summer when
Oh,
it's
by
nice
the
and dry,
summer. There we go.
nice and dry for you, you'll be cordially invited to.
Thank you. I would love to.
And some
Yeah.
and every season has a different intention, right? So
Yeah.
that's very much about harvest. So, and when we say harvest, it's more of your visions, your dreams, your aspirations. You go
Mm,
for a winter one, it's a very different energy. A spring one is again, it's each of the 4 seasons have different intentions. If you want to
mm.
go with the seasons, which I recommend, if you're doing it the authentic way.
Yeah, I feel like my heart and my body says summer. That's true. Any chance for me
Yeah.
to be in summer, I'm definitely that person. Goodness, this is amazing. I know that there's a couple of girlfriends as well that are on here that have been chatting, that would probably be really up for coming as well. So I'm sure they'll be talking to me a bit later about that.
It's a magical barn conversion where it sleeps minimum eight, and on
Yeah,
also
amazing.
they have minimum 8 to 10 people staying over a weekend or just a 1 day, 1 night kind of
Gosh.
thing.
Well, Mark, I mean, this has
Good fun,
been
isn't it?
really fascinating and, and really enlightening as well, to hear about your incredible wisdom and the connection to our teeth. And, probably one of the best things for me was that our teeth are crystal.
They are.
Like I was like, wow, I never knew that, I never knew that, but it makes sense that they hold that frequency.
And a
No
lot of
one's
memory.
ever told me that.
Memory, ancestral memories.
Ancestral
Our
memories.
bones hold these memories, so do our teeth. Yeah, yeah.
So the epigenetics,
Mhm.
essentially, rather than genetics, but the epigenetics is held in our teeth as well. So even if it might not be, so I have two children. I know you have children as well. So perhaps we can see in our children something of ourselves with the teeth. It'll be really fascinating to look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I'll end with this one point that's we're making great leaps and bounds with regrowing teeth thanks to harvesting stem cells from teeth, from baby teeth. So there are banks where when you lose a tooth, especially children lose their baby teeth, you can cryo save them on ice, so to speak, and keep them for future stem cell therapy.
Oh
And
my
regrow the teeth.
goodness.
Yeah.
My son, actually, he's now nearly 16, but he actually had three. So he had the baby tooth came out, and then something happened with one of his adult teeth, and a new one was underneath. And our dentist couldn't believe it.
Wow.
She was like, I've never seen that. And I said, well, I don't know. I think he's from some outer galaxy anyway, my son. But, I honestly think he has this ability to, he lives in the forest, basically, in the sea. So he's a forest sea animals boy. And he's a diver as well, scuba diver. And I think he just has this affinity with creating and manifesting, So he's an interesting case. I must go, but it was amazing. And, everybody that's listening either now or on the replay, please leave a message. Let me know, what you got from this and reach out to Mark. All his details will be there. But
Yeah.
just for now, if you are listening, your website, Mark, just say your website for people because they might want to pop off and have a quick look.
Yeah, it's called thedentalshaman.com. Very straightforward. Thedentalshaman.com. It's all one word.
Thedentalshaman.com. Okay, so because it will take time for this to calibrate and for me to put the notes on. So it's good that you can have a look at that now if you choose to. Mark, thank you. It's been a pleasure to meet you, a pleasure to share energy with you, and I know we're going to be in touch.
Believe it or not, not this weekend, but the following weekend, we got friends in Hastings, and we go to Coodon Beach sometimes in the summer, which is
That's
probably,
round the corner from
I
me.
know. And you said you're Bex Hill, so
Literally, Coodon Beach is like literally, I'm by the sea here. The sea's there. Coodon Beach is down that road. So yeah, well, please let's if we can meet up if it works, and
I'll
we
let you
can
know. And if
say hi.
time it'll be, as the warmer weather kicks in, we'll go down more often. Yeah,
Okay, my love. Right. Well, thank you so much. Lovely to see you.
brilliant.
Thanks everyone for listening in live. And
Joy,
yeah,
good laugh. Thank you.
this was Conversations with Susan. Thanks, Mark.
Pleasure. Bye.
Bye. Just stop recording.